The 3 keys to back pain relief. Hey everybody, this is Mike Erlob again, and it's another episode of Power Your Life. It is just awesome to see everybody here. Today we're going to talk about back pain, kind of what we've been talking about for a while. But I want to reveal, after all these years of practice, 3 of the top main keys, the things that you really need to focus on if you really want to fix your back, and you want to fix it now and you want to fix it fast. You see, we're all looking for that fastest way to fix our back pain. I mean, let's face it, we're an impatient society. We want immediate gratification. We want it, and we want it now. We don't want to wait. But we want a fix that is not for the short term. We want it to be permanent. So, we truly do, want our cake and eat it too. But I'm really excited. I'm super excited to be sharing this stuff with you, because this is just really great information. It's going to really help you, and it's something that you can just take and use right now. So, let's get started. Let's get started with the 3 keys to back pain relief. So key number 1 is, and I'm going to grab my assistant Billy Bob here, and hopefully you can still see me. But Billy Bob's a little thin. He's lost a little bit of weight. He's been participating in our 4-week weight loss system for busy moms and dads. So he looks absolutely fantastic. But Billy Bob's got a problem. You see, Billy Bob's got back pain, and he needs to know what the first key that he needs to take care of. And this is so overlooked. I can't tell you how many times I talk to clients that have been treated multiple times at other clinics, and I certainly do not want to dismiss what other therapists are doing, but I cannot believe how overlooked this is. And the key number 1 is you have to stretch your psoas muscle. And so you're going to ask, Mike, what do you mean psoas muscle? What's the psoas? Well, I want to tell you, okay? So when I say psoas, and it's spelled P-S-O-A-S, okay? So think of this as your hip flexor. And this is really your primary muscle of your hip flexor group. So the psoas is located deep inside, all right? So it actually arises off of the lumbar spine here, okay? So you have to imagine, you get your stomach contents here, and we've taken all that out of the way, and your psoas muscle lines, it actually attaches from the vertebrae on both sides, then also on these little pieces of bone that stick out. We call those transverse processes. And then that comes down and actually comes through the abdominal pelvic area. There's another muscle that lines in the pelvis called the iliacus. Together they become the iliopsoas. They travel all the way down, and they attach themselves to this little bony spot on your femur or your thigh bone. And so when that muscle contracts, it lifts your leg up, okay? So it's why we call it a hip flexor. Now, the thing that's really important about this muscle, and the reason that we're going to talk and spend so much time talking about it, is this muscle is the only muscle in the body that attaches the spine, or the upper part of your body, to the lower part of your body, meaning the legs. No other muscle does that, and that's why it is so incredibly important. There's other muscles that go from the pelvis to the leg and from the spine to the pelvis, but this is the only one that actually crosses that entire distance. And so it has a huge impact on back pain. So this muscle will have the greatest impact on your pain and overall health. It stabilizes your spine, and it helps produce your leg movement. So as I mentioned, when you can imagine this muscle coming through here, when it contracts, it's going to pull your legs up this way, or it's going to bend you forward, okay? So due to the large demands on this muscle, it tends to really become problematic. And one of the main problems is sitting. The amount of sitting that we do in our society and in our lifestyle today, this muscle, and if you can imagine, I'm going to pull Billy Bob back up here. When you sit down from the side, okay, that muscle shortens. So that muscle's running here. And so if I bring my legs up like he's in a sitting position, or bring his legs up, that muscle is going to adaptively shorten. And so then what happens is with that adaptive shortening, it tightens, and that muscle starts to go into a spasm. It actually tightens, and it's like this tonic contracted state, and it loses its ability to function properly. And so you can think of it that like when the psoas muscle does this, take your fist, and what I want you to do is I want you to squeeze, make a fist, squeeze as hard as you can, and then look at your knuckles, and if you notice, your knuckles are going to start to turn white. Okay, and that is what's happening with this psoas muscle. It becomes tight, it becomes what we call hypertonic, and the blood flow, just like to your knuckles when you're squeezing really hard, the blood flow into that spastic muscle, it decreases. And that creates a whole set of problems with that decrease in blood flow, causes a buildup of waste products, causes increased pain, irritation, inflammation. But what happens then too is as you go to stand up, so when you're going from this position where it's shortened and tight, and actually you're putting slack on that muscle so it doesn't hurt. But when you go to stand up, it pulls down. And so then what happens is it's like somebody taking their hand and pulling on the spine. It creates compression. So it creates compression on the spine, on the discs, and then on the back side, if you can imagine the lumbar spine being pulled forward, that creates a compression of these, what we call facet joints, which are these little joints in the back of the spine. And they wear out over time. And so that's when you start getting bone spurs that start to form, the nerves start to get pinched, and this all occurs over the course of years. You see, seldom is back pain a result of just one injury. It's almost always a product of too much stress over time. So again, think of it like somebody just reaching in, grabbing a hold of your back or your spine and pulling with their hands, pulling forward on it. Obviously that wouldn't feel too good. So you have to stretch, you have to address the psoas. Okay, key number 2, we're going to move on to number 2, and you have to strengthen the right muscles. Okay, so every part of your body has 2 opposing muscle groups. If we talk about, I'm going to set Billy Bob down for a minute, but if you talk about, say, your arm, okay, you have the biceps, which is the muscle on the front, and on the back side you have the triceps. Well, these muscles have to be in balance with each other. Otherwise, if one overpowers the other, your arm would either stay permanently locked or it would bend all the way. However, when you do go to, say, bend your elbow and you go to flex it, when that bicep contracts, the brain has to send a signal that tells the triceps to relax. So when one muscle group is contracting, the opposing muscle group has to relax. And of course, vice versa. Now, how does that affect your spine? Well, I'm glad you asked, because we're going to get Billy Bob in on this. Now, so Billy Bob, the hips and the spine, the opposing muscle group, we just got done talking about the psoas, all right? So now the opposing muscle group to the psoas is a hip flexor. It brings the leg this way, but its opposing muscle group or motion is hip extension, which is kicking the leg back. The glutes, the gluteal muscles, specifically, they have 3 of them. You have the gluteus maximus, which is the AKA butt muscle. You have the gluteus medius and minimus. The medius and minimus are kind of these side glutes, but right now I'm going to be talking more about your rear glutes, okay? The gluteus maximus. So that is the opposing muscle group. So now the gluteus maximus, the old butt muscle, it's designed to pull your leg back. It fills in right here and attaches down to your femur. And it extends, but it also stabilizes your spine through its action and effect on the pelvis. Now the problem is when the psoas is too tight, okay, and it's in that hypertonic state, it's all contracted up, then what happens is your brain actually starts to shut off the neurological impulses to those gluteal muscles, all right? So it actually reduces the neurological activity, the muscle firing decreases. And when that happens, that's what we call reciprocal inhibition. And when that happens, that muscle group starts to get very, very weak, meaning the gluteal muscles, they will start to weaken. And then you start losing the stability of the spine. And what you see happening is where and you can see this if you walk around town, and you look at, I look at people, and that's just you kind of observe. You'll notice that people with back pain, they have a atrophy or loss of muscle of their gluteus, okay? So we call that the disappearing butt syndrome. Some people call it the old man butt syndrome, where that gluteal development actually decreases and they lose that. And that anyone that has that, you can tell right away that they are probably have had or do have back pain. And it's a real issue. And so you have to address the gluteal muscles. That's really one of those key areas that you have to do. The other thing that's really important is you have to address the lower abdominals. So your abdominal muscles are divided into an upper half and lower half. We're talking about the lower half, okay? Those lower abdominals which form this corset around your midsection and help support that spine, they're really key. And then the other two muscle groups are your quadriceps and then also your hamstrings. Because of how they support the pelvis and the lower part of the body, they're extremely important in keeping the spine healthy. So I'd like to move on to key number 3. I told you I was going to give you 3 keys. So key number 3 is you want to keep your spine neutral or in neutral positions when you're doing work or repetitive activities. So what we're talking about is your spine has 3 natural curves, okay? In the lumbar or lower spine, it curves in just a little bit. And then in the thoracic or the upper back, it will curve out a little bit. And then the neck, it will curve in a little bit. And those natural curves are designed, it kind of makes this S-shaped. It's designed to help distribute the load of the body and to help provide that cushion. Because if the spine was completely straight, that loading would be way too much. And so it helps to distribute the forces a lot more effectively when you're moving, bending, twisting, and lifting. But what gets us into trouble is when we lose those curvatures. You see, the spine is actually stronger with these natural curves than, like I said, if it was straight. So I want you to think of your spine like a shock absorber, all right, or a spring. So, in addition, but if this spring obviously is too straight, it's a problem. But if it's curved too much in either direction, that's going to result in damage too. So if it curves in too much, and we call that a lumbar lordosis, that's going to result in damage. And you see, this is especially true if you're moving, lifting, bending, twisting, obviously doing those things at the same time, is you want to keep your spine in a neutral position. That means when you bend over to lift, that you actually squat down and that you keep a little curvature in your spine, keep that back arched just a little bit as you go down, and you want to use those legs and those knees and those really strong power muscles to lift and not just the spine. And too often I see that time and time again where it's just so much easier to, where you relax your back and then you just bend over and, pick something up and you don't bend at the knees. And you do that, if you do that repetitively, it's going to place that extra stress and it's going to wear things out. There's no question about it. So in order to avoid this damage, it's important to, when you go to lift, you tighten your abdominals, you squeeze those tight, you keep a little natural curve in your spine, and then you perform the lifting at that point. So we start with these 3 key areas, and I'll review them for you. You've got to stretch the psoas. You've got to strengthen the key muscles, primarily the glutes, but don't forget about the lower abdominals, also the quadriceps and the hamstrings, okay? And then the third is keep your spine in a neutral position, keep your abdominals engaged when you're lifting. That will protect those natural curvatures. If you can do those 3 things, that is going to give you very significant results very, very quickly. And your back will start to respond. Now I'd like to leave you with a quote. Nelson Mandela said, and I love this quote, "We must use time wisely and forever realize that the time is always ripe to do right." So I'd like to leave you with that quote. You can think about that, but until next time, let's stay healthy and keep moving forward.